It's late fall 2011 and Jacob wants to go bear hunting. We drive to Hells Canyon and get there late at night, so we'll spend the night under the stars at the trailhead. The next morning we're woke up by the sounds of some old range cattle that are checking us out just to see what we're doing. They make very good alarm clocks, and then it's time for Jacob to get up and get ready. We're loading up our packs and our rifles, and we're getting ready to take the 7-mile trail into McGraw Creek. As we first start out, we see some tracks along the trail. Aha, there's been an old mountain lion here the night before, looking for him a nice tender deer. Jacob has plans of making a rug out of him, but it looks like he's already got himself securely put away. So we'll continue on up the trail, hoping to spot one of the sneaky old black bears. And more tracks of that big old mountain lion, but he's being really careful. He hears us coming and he knows when to hide. The milkweed adds some color and some character to the trail's edge as we push on. After several hours, we reach the bench level, and now it's time to start glassing to see if we can see something. We look up every little draw, 'cause these little draws have berries in them that are ripe right now, so the bear ain't eating, and we know he's here. He left us a big old bear track right in one of the springs. We go on up past the poison ivy and on toward the bench. Then in the leaves and weeds we hear that familiar sound, and that's a rattlesnake. We see him just laying there motionless, and he's a good big one too. And then he's trying to sneak away from us. Usually they're not very aggressive and would just as soon avoid you. And this guy is doing exactly that. So we'll just let him slither off into the bushes without bothering him any farther. After all, he is a big, older snake, and a pretty good snake at that. And he'll just slide off out of the way. The only thing, he's right at the spot where we get water, so we need to be extremely careful when we get water. That's nice of the old rattlesnake to be guarding the water hole, but I just hope he doesn't mind us getting a little water there. We'll fill us up some jugs of water and move on up higher to a good spot to camp where we can see the whole world around us. And this is just a little seep spring, so we found a little piece of bark and made a little pipe to pipe the water into the jug. It must be all right. Jacob's sure hitting it.
How's that for water?
It's good. Cold.
We push our way further and further till we can find us that ideal spot to camp where we can watch for bear right from our camp. On the way, we spot an old bull elk. He looks like he's got a little bit of a gimpy leg. He must have been whipped out of the herd because this is their rutting season right now, and he probably isn't able to fight, or else he would be over and have his own little harem of cows. So he's just wandering up over the hills, and he looks like he's just madder than fury. He's raking some bushes, although that's mostly just to polish his antlers. Archery season is open right now, and if I'd have had my bow and arrow along, I'd have gone up there and had a little visit with him. but I don't have a bow and arrow, so he's home free. He can rake all the trees he wants, and no one's going to be pestering him. And normally we never ever see anyone else in here, and if we got an elk up here, we'd have our work cut out for us for packing him out. So we'll just kind of watch him and see how he's doing. Maybe another year I'll pack my bow and arrow up here and see about him. After we tire of the elk, we overlook McGraw Creek, and this is an excellent spot to find a bear. There's all the little green stuff are berry patches, and then in the background is a ponderosa pine forest. We get up on top and we can look both over the Spring Creek bench and the McGraw Creek bench. So we're going to go on over to McGraw Creek and see if there's any bear there. We pass by the old mowing machine. At one time there was a homestead up here, and they packed everything in on the backs of mules, including a mowing machine, a hay rake, and all the material to build the cabin. There was never a road in here, and it was miles and miles. They had to pack this stuff up from the river, where it was brought in on paddle wheel boats. We look down upon the old orchard, which is still growing. The bears have mangled it pretty good. A praying mantis is sitting waiting for his next dinner, and then we watch the orchard very carefully. We took turns taking a little nap. Jacob would nap a while, and then I took the first nap, and then I woke from it, and I looked over, and Jacob started taking his nap. He hadn't been into his nap over a few seconds, and I looked over across, and here came Old Chocolate. He was a nice big black bear, and he was just wandering down toward the orchard. He got behind a little bunch of trees. I didn't expect Jacob to shoot yet, but Jacob took a shot, and the trees deflected his bullet, and Old Chocolate had his bags packed, and he was out of there. We see bear droppings where bear have been all over the place, and they're eating some of the apples from the orchard. We'll look around here a little bit, since Jacob's already interrupted the peace and quiet of the McGraw Creek with the sharp report of a rifle, so there probably won't be another bear for a little while. So we're going over and sample the orchard and see how the apples are. The trees are pretty well done for. The bear have just totally mangled them, climbing up in them, breaking big limbs off. There's plenty of evidence of the bear having been here. We see some apples on the ground that they've climbed up and knocked down to the ground, and then some great huge bear tracks all over the ground. The only people that ever show up here are the ranchers to chase cattle, and they make so much noise the bear move out in front of them. So we're about the only bear hunters that ever show up here. So I'll bet those old bear are pretty bold.
Wow, that's one big bear, isn't he? Yeah.
Yep.
Look at his hind foot there, right? How does your foot compare to that? Wow. Some bear.
That looked like Old Chocolate's tracks, and we can see their claw marks where they've been climbing the apple trees, just clawed all up. Jacob kind of missed Old Chocolate though, so he's home free. We find the shear off from an old walking plow still at the cabin, and a piece off from an old dump rake, a tooth off from the old dump rake, and here's the old cabin. It looks to me like it's seen better days. The roof on it caved in last winter, and there's still a bed, an old antique bed inside, but it looks like the old cabin is nothing more than a memory, and there was a family lived in it up until the 1940s, and they even raised some children in this remote cabin. I guess probably at that period of time things changed and people went from being on farms to the cities and had jobs in the cities, and the whole culture changed where there are no longer people living in these remote locations right here, although there are some people still living in Hell's Canyon like that. We find the newer cabin that they built right next to the old one, and there's an old lilac tree that probably the woman in the cabin wanted something green, so she chose a lilac tree, and it's still growing. There's still a few things hung on the cabin wall, and the old root cellar is totally gone, but we can still see where it was. They kept all their canned goods and food in that. The butterfly mullein is some of them in bloom and the rest are seeds, and they make excellent food for the grouse and chukars, and even bear and deer will eat these seeds from them. The wind blew where we camped, so we tied our tent to a little tree. Little did I know we camped right on the edge of an ancient Indian grave. That wasn't very respectful, but we didn't know it was there. And so the Indians, whenever they lost a warrior or someone, they'd carry him up to the bench and bury him up there where his spirit could see the whole world.